Aaron. So, hey, if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition, Home Gadget Geeks. It is Thursday night, March 16th. It's 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain, 6 Pacific. If you've got this any other time than that, or I don't know, check your local time zone, you've got the recorded version. And that's okay. Hang tight. We'll get started here in just a second. Brian is already checking in chat, and so I want to welcome him. Brian, thanks for coming out tonight. And we'll get started here. Oh, let's get Brian up there. He says, good evening. So good to see you, Brian. Kevin Schoonover is with me. Kevin, thanks for last minute. I needed to move Uyghur down a week. You posted in Discord about PC builds. I was like, we got to talk about this. So thanks for saying yes.
Very good. And chances are good everybody's going to realize why I need a PC build, because now that the show has started, I'm started locking up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I think it's fine. Was that me that was locking up on you?
No, I think it's all me. It's all here.
I just opened my beer, and it literally
what do you got
fizzed
there?
everywhere. Hold on. So, well, tell us what you're drinking. I'm going to need to get hold on. I'm going to need to get a couple paper towels. you tell us what you got. I'll be right back.
All right. All right. This evening, I'm enjoying from Urban Growler, a local brewery here in St. Paul.
Oh, you're right. You are locking up a little bit.
A little bit. We're enjoying the D Lovely Porter. So going with a darker beer. Unfortunately my wife picked up beer for me. Unfortunately, she hasn't gotten the message that I'm kind of off IPAs these days. So
why are you just
taste
or calories or because you're looking great.
Thank you. Yeah. Taste is we were out for dinner here about a year ago, and one of my wife's friends pointed out that many people suffer from IPA fatigue, and I think that's me. I think I've just I'm wanting to try different things, so we're heading down.
So you got a stout.
This is a porter.
Yeah,
but I got a couple of stouts as well. So.
Yeah, I never really took off on the IPA in the IPA world. I like them sweet or crisp or dark or tasty, and the IPAs are just too bitter for me. It's too hoppy.
Yep.
I just never got there. Hey, I'm not saying you can't drink them. If you want to drink them, you're fine. You can drink all the IPAs you want, but that's just been one of the. So not only did when I opened up the beer, it foamed and went all over my desktop. As you were talking, I spilled it. So, I mean, fortunately, I still got quite a bit there. This is so Aaron, over the next 4 weeks, these are beers that Aaron sent to me from Alberta. So this is Jasper Brewing Company. It says it's a crisp pills. And unlike the beers John sent me, those were like 9.5 or 8.5%. This is a staggering 4.8, and it just says crisp pills. This kind of reminds me. Remember when we had generic beer in the U.S.? Remember the whole generic movement in the 80s?
Yes, very much. I lived on generic mac and cheese during college. So.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me a little bit of that. Crisp, just says crisp pills. Enjoy the true Pilsner, showcasing local malt from the foothills of the Canadian Rockies.
Beautiful.
Proudly partnership brewed, product of Jasper, Alberta. So, Aaron, thanks for sending those. We got her in a couple weeks. And she sent them over, and so but here's the mess from from all the beer. Holy cow! I hadn't even been drinking. That's not true. I had an old fashioned earlier, so I guess I was drinking a little bit. But Ken, good to see you. Thanks for checking it out. Brian, I don't know. Hopefully the video is settled down now. Kevin was having an issue just for a second, but I think we've got him figured out. Ken says, "Good evening. Good to see you." Thanks for checking. Okay, I haven't even tasted it yet. Let's give it a taste. Crisp is right. Like it's a little bitter. I'm gonna have to wash the whole. I got one of those big mats for your. I'm gonna have to wash the whole thing. It's got beer all over it.
Well,
Kind of crisp, a little bitter, not, but not the most flavor. I've had better pills. I'm not going to complain. Aaron sent it, so
hey,
I'm not
free
complaining.
beer.
But
There's
yeah,
nothing.
it's free beer.
Free beer is good beer.
Yeah, as we get out of winter, you got to kind of clear out your stouts and your, the dark ones, and there's get ready. Do you have a summer beer, Kevin, that you lean towards?
I was just going to segue into that when you held up that crisp pills can.
Yes.
2 years ago. No, it was pre-COVID. Would have been probably 2019. All the downtown St. Paul microbrews seemed to have a bit of a contest to come up with a summer pilsner kind of a beer, and we all joked about the fact that it was a little bit like they were all trying to make a Pabst Blue Ribbon of their own, but they were really quite good. They were real tasty beers and nice. So my go-to in the summertime is unfiltered wheat from Boulevard in Kansas City. That's a go-to.
Yeah, that's a close one by us.
The other one, I forget the brewery. They're bigger cans. It's a grapefruit rattler from a German brewery.
Nice.
And a couple of my liquor stores carry them. It's a great, refreshing beer to drink after mowing the lawn. The only problem is every time I seem to buy it, there's another beer connoisseur there who takes the time to tell me, that's a 3.2 beer, right? That ain't got nearly enough alcohol in it, and it's 3.2. I just warning you before you head home. And I kind of do the very polite, hey, thanks. I'm not drinking it to get drunk. I'm drinking it to be refreshed and enjoy a nice beer. So yeah, I try and keep it kind of light in the summer, but those are there's another I forget who makes it. It's Sweaty Betty. I think it's out of Boulder.
Yeah. I've had a Sweaty Betty. Those are pretty good.
Very, very tasty brews.
Yeah, some really good stuff. We've been, I think for the last year, I've probably been focusing more on bourbon than on beer, and it actually I don't get so full. When I drink beer, I just get full. But the other day I was drinking bourbon. I was just like, I think I need a bourbon break. Like, I think, it's just like you said, the IPA, you get a little IPA fatigue. I think I've got a little bourbon fatigue, and I'm kind of just like, Sarah even made a comment tonight. She was like, she goes, I was making you an old fashioned, and you don't have that many bourbons to choose from. I was like, I thought I was buying too many at this point, but apparently I wasn't. And so yeah, I think I have a little bourbon fatigue until you said it that way, Kevin. I'm not sure I put two and two together there.
Well, and I've never been a big bourbon whiskey kind of guy, although my engineering team is mostly based in our San Jose facility. Last time I was out there, Japanese whiskeys are all the rage. You got to get to know your local liquor store owners and have them text you when they get a fresh shipment of, and I forget all the brand names, but those were quite nice. But
they're good. They're tasty. They're Scottish style, right? The Japanese learned how to brew by basically from Scotch, and so they're very, very similar taste from what you'd see in Scotch.
Oh, very much so.
Joe is saying his summer lawn mowing beers are Corona, not a bad one. Bud Light Lime. I do like a good Bud Light Lime and the Blue Moon Light Ski with pineapple. Now I haven't had that one yet. I've had their tangerine, Blue Moon Tangerine light version, whatever that is. That's pretty good. And then Joe says he's also been on a tequila kick here lately, and that's not a bad. I mean, bourbons have been so popular. I mean, the prices have just kind of gone out of control. I kind of stopped buying them because they were like $50 a bottle, and I'm just like, okay, let's settle this thing down. You can still get some good rums. We had Randy Walker on a couple weeks ago. He was talking. He's a rum guy, and there's some good rums out there, pretty reasonable. And then tequilas too are still kind of in that place. You get some pretty good tequilas.
Through the winter, we go through quite a bit of rum in the wintertime. Hot buttered rums during the deep part of the winter. I've also come up with a very nice local restaurant. W.A. Frost makes a wassail that is a rum-based punch kind of thing, and I've pretty well replicated their recipe, so that's works out kind of nice.
Cool. Yeah.
For hard drinks in the summertime, I don't know if you've ever had Pimm's. It's a gin. It's a flavored gin out of England, and that and some lemon sour makes a real good summer drink. So,
yeah, Pimm's. Huh? I'll have to look. We've been buying, of course, Ryan Reynolds gin. America, something. I should know the name of it. I don't know my gins very well. Gray Whale has been the other one we've been buying a lot of. That's $25. You're like, okay, that's not too bad for gin. So that's kind of the standard now. 20 is kind of the minimum. I mean, you can go a little bit lower, but I remember being able to get that stuff for, thinking like $10 was expensive. You're like, oh, $10. I don't know. Give me the Jack for $4.50. Right.
Well, I didn't realize it when I grabbed a hat because my hair is a mess, but I graduated from University of Wisconsin Stout and started there in 1979. And I was reminiscing with some old friends about the local liquor stores always had college beer, 3 cases for $10. You could always get 3 cases of beer for $10. And I remember
guys pitching in like, okay, you got $2, you got $3. Okay.
$2-3, let's get this. And there seemed to be, I think things were shifting away from returnable bottles because you'd get cases of North Star or Lone Star or some god awful beer, and they were returnable bottles, but they'd been stamped all over it, not for return.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you looked at them, you could see they were worn out. This was their last.
This is it. The end of the road. Do not return.
Trip. No more rodeos.
Return these. Yeah, you can still turn in Iowa. You can still just across the river. I could take my bottles over there, and you could buy them in Nebraska, and then take them over there and get a nickel. It takes a lot of bottles to have that make sense. You're like, I'm not drinking that much. So
that's a Seinfeld episode where Kramer's heading for a different state to cash
something in Jersey. I think he was going to Jersey for that. Yeah. I mean, you can, but you can still do that in Nebraska and Iowa. But all right, we should probably get started here. All right, good stuff, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight. We're all PC parts. Kevin, I have a little bit of an extended intro, and then I'll bring you in. So, all right, let's do this thing. Have everything on? I feel like I've kind of half-assed it up to this point. All right, here we go. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 566 with guest Kevin Schoonover, recorded on March 16th, 2023. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the Average Tech Guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in a weird Bellevue, Nebraska. It was 56 yesterday, and it snowed with like 40-mile-an-hour winds today. I don't know. It's a weird time of the spring. Of course, we'll post a show with world-class show notes at theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget, this episode's affiliate sponsor is Nespresso. Use the code MQU328. Get $40 off any machine purchase, as well as a free capsule dispenser. If you're drinking terrible coffee, stop doing it. You don't have to do it. Like, it doesn't have to be done. You could get better coffee super easy, a step above the Keurig. Pretty good stuff. The pods are $1.25, $1.35 each. Great way to do it. Great coffee. Check it out. Nespresso.com. Use the code MQU326. Get $40 off that first machine. In spring's coming up, Kevin, we have Mark Robson coming here in, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So we're going to talk barbecuing. We also have an affiliate relationship now with Meter. So if you head out to theaverageguy.tv/meter, and if you haven't tried one of those out, that's just one of those probes you stick in. You get internal, external temp, and for all your grilling stuff. You have big summer grilling plans, or you get out there and get some stuff done?
I definitely do, but I've been kind of behind the trends with smokers and other things. I'm still mostly a charcoal guy, and got a couple old charcoal grills we keep going. Tend to bank things off that way, so that's been pretty good. Thinking about a smoker, heading that direction.
Since we got the smoker last May, I have made a ton of beef jerky. Like that has been, I didn't see that coming. But during the summer, I'll make beef jerky once or twice a week. Get a London broil. I've been finding some reasonable deals on London broils, right? Get a London broil, slice it up, soak it in a marinade overnight, pull it out the next day, throw it on the smoker at smoke temperature, so like 200. Let it go 6 hours, whatever you like. And then I just eat it before it's even off the grill. I just start eating it right from the grill. It's pretty great. Have you had fresh beef jerky that way before?
Yep. One of our neighbors does beef jerky. And when you mentioned getting deals on it, we've got 2 local butcher shops, family run, and he's struck up a relationship with the one guy that he gets the text message of, "Hey, I've got some got to be sold today beef. Come and get it."
Yeah.
So he ends up with some pretty good deals. Pretty good deals that route.
That's a good way to do it. I kind of I've been watching the grocery stores. I can get, London broil for like $5 a pound if you watch for the sales, which is pretty good pricing. I think you could buy it at Costco here in the United States. Costco has some pretty good deals on beef. And so a great way to doing it. Well, if you haven't jumped in on the Meter and you're thinking about it maybe this spring, check out theaverageguy.tv/meter. And then big thanks to Jay Franzi, who joined us last week. If you didn't catch it, all Chat GPT. And so if you want to jump in and get that done, of course, they've released Chat GPT 4 this week, out and available. And if you want to check that out, we didn't cover that, but that is out. Check it out. Now posted out at theaverageguy.tv. And then, of course, big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. If you're finding value in this podcast and you want to trade some value for value, we've got some Patreon plans, $5 a month. No commitment. You can do it 1 month or whatever you want to do. And then we have a bunch of folks that do it every single month. Thanks for your Patreon sponsorship as well. I mentioned him a little bit earlier, but Kevin Schoonover is here. Hey, Kevin, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a little last minute. We moved Uyghur to next week because of some scheduling conflicts. And then you just happened to post in Discord, hey, I'm thinking of buying some stuff. And of course, in December, I kind of went through this exercise where I kind of took the build, threw it out there and said, hey, what do you think? You put the part lists out there. Have you gotten much feedback on that? Any thoughts or
a little bit? Couple of, kicking around questions, couple of messages back and forth. So, and like with anything, I used to feel like I, kind of knew where all the sweet spots are and where everything should be. And as of the past couple of years, I've just not followed it as close as I had in the past, and wanted to get a feel, kind of the normal things is I have a ballpark idea what I'm looking at, but I would hate to, pick a video card and later realize if I'd spent $50 more or $100 more, it would have been more, it would have been a better fit for VR or, better fit for other things. So, and I think some of the things we've been hit with lately is, so, kind of configuring up 2 of them. I'm going to mess up the name here, but my son picked up a game, I think it was Red Dawn. It'll come to me. It was through Steam, but oddly, most of what he plays is on Steam. So he got Red Dawn Redemption. I knew I'd get it. He got it through Steam, but we went to download it and is 120 gig. And his SSD was saying, no, don't got 120 gig. So we quick picked up a crucial 1 terabyte SSD, copied him over. I'm pleasantly amazed at the latest version of Acronis that they give away for you to use to copy drives. Did a wonderful job. So we got him up to date there and got him playing the game, got him going good. And then he called me over. His card is a 1060, 3 gig of memory on it. And first time ever, he's getting a warning from the game saying, hey, you're getting a little low on video memory. So between the SSD and the graphic card, realizing it's probably a good time to step up into a bigger, better system.
Yeah, and that 1060 is probably not very old, 3-4 years old, maybe, right?
I think
4
I bought
5,
that.
maybe?
I think I bought that one. It's probably 4 years old now, because it seems like I bought it pre-pandemic, right before they started skyrocketing in price. So it was still a reasonable deal.
And they were reasonable. Crypto was happening, but it wasn't totally affecting the prices of them yet. And so well, you get a little I think now is a good time. I mean, I went through this purchase. I went through all these purchase options back in November, and I think I hit the sweet spot. Everything's gone up in price since then. Now they've pulled back a little bit. There's been, like, I saw 1 terabyte SSD, NVMe 960s for like $109, which is back to, those were some, I think that's what I paid for it. So for some of those components, we're starting to see some of those prices come back. I would say if you're in the PC build space right now, build a parts list. You've done that at Newegg, but build a parts list somewhere and then just kind of monitor it and buy it over time. Are you in a hurry, Kevin? Like, is this something you need to do right now? You're talking about building two. You threw out an Intel and an AMD. Are you comparing the two? Are you going to build two separate ones, and why AMD for one and Intel for the other? Talk a little bit about that.
Actually, I started off with the one for the son, and then I realized, as I'm locking up here a little bit once in a while, my daily, and I hate to say daily driver, I spend so much time on my work laptop. I don't do much compute here anymore, but this thing is way long in the tooth. It's an older i5, 16 gig of memory, and it's just seen better days. And I'm starting to do a little gaming myself. So it's probably two machines. Intel AMD was just kind of, hey, if I'm going to do something, it might be time to play with one in each camp, seeing as I'm likely to build two machines and kind of see where things fit. I think the other side of it is I was sitting there, ran a couple errands one morning. My wife and I have a bad habit of, I don't know if Caribou Coffee is down your way, but
well, it used to. No, they used to be in Omaha, no more.
So Caribou's are local. Choose it over Starbucks. Two large mochas is $12, and I'm probably there every day. And as I'm sitting in line, I'm thinking, I spend thousands of dollars a year buying coffee at a coffee shop. I think I should shell out $1,000 and get myself a decent computer that's not 4 or 5 years old. So kind of the logic of spending money got the better of me.
Yeah, when you put it together that way, or you start thinking about it, I was in the same boat. I had an 8 or 9 year old Core i7 that I'd put together, 32 gig of RAM, that I'd started at 16 and thought that was a lot back then, and it probably was. And maxes out at 32, and that thing worked great for a while. I got the Mac for this kind of purpose, but for podcasting and stuff like that. But I wanted kind of a gaming computer. It was a great experience to price it all out, build it, put it together. Big thanks, like Ryan sent me a cooler to try with it. So I still think it's a lot of fun. We don't talk about builds quite like we used to. We used to spend a lot of time on Home Server Show talking about builds and such, and when we get together. But man, that beer is getting to me here. It's making me burp. Getting some beer burping going on. But it's been fun over the last couple months for my build. And then when you said you were going to do this, so are you set on you're going to do one and the other for this, or are you thinking, are you going to go with like if you're convinced to go Intel, will you do both Intel or both AMD?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do one of each.
Okay.
I think I'm going to do an Intel and an AMD just so I can get some comparatives from a use case point of view.
Yeah.
Kind of see where I end up with it. It is interesting because I've over the years I've gotten, whether it's home servers or home PCs, I've gotten overly enamored with keeping it small. You know, the days of an ATX case where if I wanted to add something to it, there's plenty of adding card slots to add other things to it. I just don't want to. I don't want to have a big, huge box taking up space under my desk or on my desk or whatever else. But of course, the thing with choosing like mini ITX is arguably you have no adding card slots because the one adding card slot gets gobbled up by a GPU and you really have to find everything else on the board. I think you kind of touched on it when you were looking at systems is, okay, so I got, with an ITX board, I got no place to plug in Wi-Fi, so I got to get Wi-Fi on it.
Yeah.
And the farther I go up the food chain, I don't really need Wi-Fi 6, but that's what comes with this better system.
Yeah.
And Ethernet port, I might use an Ethernet port, and it's 2.5 gig now. So, hey, that's cool. I've got ports to handle that downstairs. The other thing from my point of view for these two motherboards I picked out without necessarily realizing it right off the bat is both of them have really pretty decent audio chips or audio subsystems in them. And as a benefit for it was one of those things that I didn't have it on my list of requirements, but both of these have optical ports for audio. And I've kind of waffled back and forth between two speaker systems with my PC, and both of them have optical inputs. So that's a big plus for me. So, and probably ends up being a more expensive motherboard than I would normally look towards, but it really ends up checking off all the boxes for me.
Well, I mean, you mentioned, when you think about the board itself, and I think the boards have, well, and they've always kind of been this way, but they are like, they're really good now. Like as I was looking at motherboards and everything that comes on them, you're like, and by the way, if you're listening to the podcast version or the YouTube version of this, I'll have a list of everything Kevin is thinking about in the show notes. So head out to theaverageguy.tv/HGG566 and we'll have a complete list of a part list out there. Live folks, you'll have to kind of follow along with us. But I guess as I was looking at this, one of the things that I had, what I was impressed with is just the quality of the motherboards. Now, 10 years ago, we were paying, $100 for a motherboard was a lot. You're paying $200 to $300 now, but I think you get more, right? I mean, as you look at those, they're better boards, right?
Yep. Yeah. If you look at what these guys come with, they're better boards to start with. As I said, top of the line Wi-Fi 6. I think one of them has Wi-Fi 6E, better quality Ethernet ports, which not a huge cost there, but nice to have it built in. The audio systems in some of these are far beyond, if not that I'll head in this direction, but a lot of these better boards will do surround sound. You can get Dolby 5 or Dolby 5.1 decoding on them. Most of them now have two NVMe ports on them for M.2 cards. Yeah. So if you want to put them down with memory. And once again, we're talking about ITX, so little small, form factor, small in size. So they tend to. So I think you're right. You get a better board, you get more stuff on it, and what they tend to be well-built boards.
Yeah. That's at least that's what I've seen. By the way, I'd encourage you to go 6E on them. I think that's kind of 6 was kind of feels like it was intermediate, and then 6E came along, and I think that's at least from what I've seen. And I think you're right. I think the other decision I had to make was just how many M.2 slots do I want on the board?
Yeah.
right? Some of the lower end boards are going to come with 2. They're going to come with a Gen 4 and a Gen 3. Some of the higher end boards are going to come with 4 Gen 4s or two Gen 4s and two Gen 3s, whatever. Have you thought from a hard drive configuration on them, how are you going to stack the storage space on these builds?
Yeah, I think 2 is going to be fine for it on both these, just from a starting point. And I think I got to go double check on these. I think both of these support PCIe version 4. And so I think both of the builds I've picked out, one just to take, kind of fill a slot. I'm figuring 2 terabyte drives. I picked a Crucial P3 Plus for one, and Solidigm P41 for the other one. And I've had good luck with both those. For folks who maybe aren't familiar with the name Solidigm, that is, Intel sold their flash drive group off to SK Hynix, and this is the mutual company now is called Solidigm. So yeah, and then I tend to just all my life I've kind of thrown in an extra drive in computers to have a place to park stuff, things that maybe I don't want to have on my main drive with my stuff. So I might I've got a couple of spare 1 terabyte drives laying around that I might throw in as spares. Otherwise, 100 bucks will get you a decent 2 terabyte drive these days. So
for sure.
Yeah. Flash is pretty plentiful right now. So like you were saying, I kind of reflect back on this, things used to be a lot cheaper, but right now I think things are cheaper than they were a year or two ago. So,
Flash, sure.
Yeah, Flash was so hard to come by. So, I think things have gotten kind of back to a certain level of normalcy.
I think so. When you were talking about extra storage, are you going to put that just on an SSD, or are you thinking about a spinner in there for just space?
Just an SSD. I've still got an Unraid system downstairs, and and for all of Jim's fans out there, I still have a Drobo downstairs.
That still works.
Still works. Still works.
That's good. Mine gave up the ghost twice. Broke. I fixed it. Broke again.
Was it the power switch?
No, the board went.
Okay.
The board went. Yeah.
The temporary power button on the 5 NAS is a kind of a known kind of a deal.
Yeah, I just kind of moved on. I took those drives out, put them in I built, big storage racks that were doing crypto stuff on, and I was just like, it's fine. It's fine. It's a lot more efficient that way. Okay, so probably a 2 terabyte M.2, a 2 terabyte or whatever you have, a 1 terabyte SSD for just kind of garbage storage. You've got internal networking storage if you need more space, that kind of stuff. When you're thinking memory right now, like, what's your thoughts on that? If you're building the PC, I did the Max 128, which seems a little ridiculous, but every PC I've ever built, I've always ended up taking it to the Max. And I've always had a hard time finding that memory to do that later. And I just kind of thought, I'm just gonna take it to 128. What's your thoughts on memory?
If it fits in your budget, I think you max it out. And that's one of the things in these 2 builds. Once again, a little bit of a potential drawback in that ITX boards just have 2 memory slots. At least these just have 2 memory slots. So I started with 32 gig on each of them. I think both of them max out at 64. I likely will take them up to 64. And I agree with your logic is, so the machine that I'm working on right now is an older machine. It's 16 gig, and that's maxed out. So back in the day, that was a lot of memory for an older generation Intel box. But I think now, I noticed my work laptop initially came with 8 gig of memory and a i7, and you get a lot of windows open. It's not enough. So I would say 16 for a working PC is kind of a bare minimum these days. 32 is maybe call it a sweet spot. 64 is I'm planning on keeping this thing for a while, so I'm gonna buy ahead a little bit on it.
Yeah. I just got a brand new laptop today at work. Just ironically, it kind of came in a Dell Latitude 7430, I think is what it is. Core i5, you're pretty much your standard, laptop. Nothing fancy. I don't do a lot of fancy stuff on it, so I don't need a fancy laptop. 16 gig of RAM, which we go in 3-year cycles with those. So we buy them 3 years in, warranties up, we trade them in right at that point, and oftentimes sell them back to the employees. My Lenovo ThinkPad, no, ThinkPad, is that what they're called?
ThinkPad. Yep, ThinkPad.
Yeah, was getting really bad. And I've had that for 3 years. Got it just before the pandemic started, and today it just shut off. I'm in the middle of something and poof, not reboot, just went off. And I'm like, okay, I had been limping this thing along for a couple months thinking, okay, eventually I got a new one coming. I'll just wait. I don't want to be one of those kinds of guys. Right. So, but today as I went down, I'm like, okay, you got to replace this thing. And Evan, it was crazy. 20 minutes. From I need a new one to here you go. And everything is set up and working and imaged and 20 minutes. These guys had a new one in my hand to take with me. Not like here's a loaner for 20 minutes. Here's your PC with everything you need in 20. It was crazy how fast that is, right? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well,
so the tools have gotten a lot better. And actually, I'll probably put a post up on Discord. So my work laptop is 4 years old and it's showing its age. And we're a small enough company that the IT department really doesn't pick laptops. So I've kind of been told, I kind of had to do the I'm VP of engineering. I'd kind of like a cool laptop. So and of course they countered with, well, what do you want? And then I'm like, well, I'm not prepared to tell you. So let me go figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's 16. I mean, the ThinkPad had 16, but that was 16 from 3 years ago. This thing's blazing out the door. It's just nice to have a new computer, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're like everything's working in zippy. I mean, stuff was skipping. My Teams video was max headroom. I mean, it was terrible. All my friends or all my coworkers were like, dude, I'm like, I'm trying to be patient. I'm just trying to be patient. So you're going to go 16. You talked about your son maybe doing some gaming, right?
Going 32.
Right? Oh, you are going 32. Okay. Yep. All right. Yep. Okay. Good. So yeah, I was going to say, any thought to, I mean, I think 32 for gaming for a kid that is probably not going to do much more than that. But for you, do you really want to think maybe more about 64?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards probably doing 64 for myself. Okay. Maybe 64 on both of them. We'll see how the numbers end up on them.
Yeah. I think 32 is good just to be for even for gaming. Although that being said, we may be moving into an era with gaming. Who knows what's coming with AI, where it might make more sense. I think the price on 32 right now was 104. No, that's the SSD. Let's find that memory. 137 for 32 gig, right? And so you're talking, 260 for 64, and I think this is just a little bit more than I paid, back in December. I got a pretty good deal on it, I think, or maybe even this could be even a little bit cheaper. Memory and hard drives seem to be back in line with some decent pricing if you're doing that right now. You from a gaming perspective, what are you thinking from the GPU? Like, where what are your thoughts on those cards?
Good question. Is for compatibility. So my son's been on a NVIDIA, and I could probably stay that route. No particular reason, but if I do an AMD CPU build for him, I might do an AMD, a Radeon graphic card. That's an area where I just to get these builds kind of going, I'm doing a 6600 XT 8 gig board. probably price wise, a 6650 seems to be a nice jump up, but I'm kind of weighing it out there as well. The big thing is I think he might start getting into VR a bit more, so I might want to jump that up quite a bit. What did you settle on in your build for a video card?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I went NVIDIA 3060,
3060.
8
Okay.
gig.
Okay.
Yeah, and it works
Good.
with VR. It works just fine. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm barely pushing it. So I think I paid 400 for that card.
Sure.
And like right now, the 660s are 275, right? From the
Yep.
the Radeon cards, the RX 6600. So
the card, the cards I'm looking at are in the, I want to say the 250, 300 kind of range, probably 250, 275.
Yeah.
The other one that I spec'd in there is just is one of the newer Intel based cards, an A770, 8 gig. Performance wise, specs, they get good reviews, and I have props to kind of do a point here. This is where Jim would say, yeah, but Kev, why do you want to risk it on an Intel video card that nobody's used before, or few people have used before? And that's where I would say, well, Jim, I thought about that as I was looking at my Microsoft Zune setting here
Nice.
that still
Nicely
works.
done. Yeah.
And as I put that down, I looked up and I thought, well, I used to be into voice activation stuff with my UB.
Yeah, I
Okay,
remember. We did a show on that.
We did a show on UB at the time.
Yeah.
I got to work with the developer at UB to come up with some really cool things to do note-based applications. So for my own detriment, I think I try to give the underdog a bit of a chance and dive in on some of these. And of course, arguably right now, Intel is not aggressively trying to buy market share, but the 770 cuts into some of the upper end. It seems to be more like a $350 card, and as you can see on the screen, this one's at $320ish right now. Sometimes they're a bit less than that. So we'll see. I would say in both cases for graphic cards on these, I'm probably going to bump up into the over 300, probably closer to 325, 350 maybe range, so that I'm much like our memory discussion. I'd hate to go cheap on it and then find out that I just undershot being able to do bigger, better things. So
well, I think on the Intel graphics card, like that's going to be your card, right? And so you're not going to be you're not going to need as much game compatibility. You're going to be doing a few things on it. You want some power there. This will give you plenty for kind of some of the things you're going to be doing. It should be just fine. Regular GPU stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I like about this call is there's not a lot of folks using them. It gives you, like you said, gives you a chance to give it a try. You can always sell it, right? That's one of those kinds of things. Like you can pull it out. It's not like the board or the chip. You can pull it out and sell it if you don't like it. I think it's much harder to, take a chance on a CPU. And then ditch that thing. I mean, you can. I just think it's harder. With the GPU, you can just pull that thing out and sell it. So I like it. I looked at these, and actually, to be honest, with as little gaming as I've done since I built this thing, I probably could have gotten away with an Intel. I'm watching a lot of YouTube videos and some other things. I ran some of that folding stuff on it just to kind of test it out and do some fun stuff with it. I've played some Flight Simulator. All that stuff would play just fine on those, right? On some of those. I bought a PC Gaming Pass for this, and I have an Xbox. Although Microsoft's doing an Xbox trade-in program right now, I may take advantage of. Trade the old one in, buy the new one. They're back in stock. They're coming up with all these things, and then I think, Jim, you're not even using the Xbox you have. Why would you do a stupid thing like that? Well, it's because what we do, right? It's what we
do. Yeah, and actually, kind of an observation I make, and it's a dated observation, and our chat room here is probably all well beyond this, but back in, it was probably 2019 when I bought the 1060 for my kid. It was sort of a whim kind of a thing, building him up a kind of his first gaming computer. And I popped that in there. And at the time, very, very much into some of the Stardew Valley on Steam and games like that. And then Minecraft. And it was all those deals where I put the card in, got it up and running, got his monitors plugged into it. And I kind of just walked away as he was playing with it. And I came back later and I'm kind of like, I did the double take because it's like, Minecraft looks a whole lot better on this card, even though it's 8-bit graphics. Oh, the Sims. He plays a lot of Sims. And looking at the Sims on a decent graphic card, it was like, I hadn't expected when I was thinking of gaming cards, I was thinking of the bigger shoot 'em up games that a lot of the kids are playing. I wasn't thinking about Minecraft and the Sims and Stardew Valley, but they look great, so I think even a good basic card can really make a difference on a lot of these more standardized games. So
well, Ryan and Bob over at Think Computers, like I was tempted to go even more like a 3070, or do I get in on the 4000 series? And they were like, 3060 be fine for me. Those guys really, they know me. Then they're just like, 30. And to be honest, I probably could have gone down a little bit. I'm glad I got the card. I'm glad I have it. It's a great build. This box is going to last me a long time. I got a lot. It's got a lot going for it. Kind of built it with expansion in mind. There's just a lot of things I like about it. And so, I felt like I made a good decision. I have no regrets from that standpoint, but it is, I think it's a good consideration. I think you're in the right. I think that 3 in GPUs, I think that 3 to 500 spot is good. And you kind of just say, at some point, you're just like, okay, where's the end of the internet for me on this graphics card? What am I really expecting out of it? And I think, let's talk about CPUs for a second, because you're thinking like an Intel i5, and then you're looking at for the AMD build, you were looking at a Ryzen 5. You're looking at the 7600. I got the 5600.
Okay.
And at a really good price point. Like I really like that lower price point. But as you're thinking about CPU versus GPU, certainly your son may be more game intensive where the GPU is more important, but you would probably be using the CPU more. Is that right? Do you think? And would you go Intel for you and AMD for him? What are your thoughts there?
That's what I'm kind of leaning on right now. Is AMD for him and Intel for me. And actually, the CPUs are kind of what I started at. And just doing some quick web searching, the Google search for sweet spot for gaming GPUs, or not GPU, CPU, sweet spot or bang for the buck in gaming CPU. And these are the two that came up. Basically it was the Intel Core i5 13400 is a great dollar, ratio kind of fits the bill, good for most applications. And then the Ryzen 5 7600X. I think the 7600 was the recommendation, but at the time I was looking at it, most places had like a discount on 7600X. So I just kind of bumped it over to the X to offer it up. $243. So very much priced in the same ballpark. I think in gaming applications, the 7600 seems to do a little bit better job than the i5, but they seem to be in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I like it. That X version is a good one to go with, and they got a 3D version too on the gaming side, right? I think there's even a 5600 3D that on the AMD side, it's kind of optimized for gaming. That may be one to look at. They're a little more expensive, but same version, but you get a little more optimized for gaming on that. I again talked with Bob and Ryan about that. Like, the X is just fine for you. But as you're thinking about that gaming build, that may be one that's worth taking a look at, just because it's a little more optimized for gaming than the other one. Are you, AMD certainly on the CPU side has done a lot of things with threading and cores and some of those pieces. Intel is a little behind on that, and they've got these efficiency cores and these other cores. With this idea of AI and some neural processing, these N cores that they're starting to talk about. Are you from a future proofing standpoint on these CPUs? You worried about that at all? I mean, we do seem to be on the cusp of some advancements on the CPU side. You may have more for what you do. You may have more insight to that than I do. Any thoughts about future proofing on this? Because your board and CPU are going to stay together forever once you put them together, right, for the most part. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's I'm not too worried about that for home use right now because of if it's AI related stuff, the industry tends to use GPUs for AI related activity. So they tend to pop into that. Although Google and a few other folks have come out with more entry level, in that broad subject area of AI, guys like Intel and Xilinx who do field programmable gate array products, they come out with boards with those chips on it to do more acceleration. Interesting thing with the AMD Intel deal in my day job. So I work for a company who's a systems integrator. So we end up manufacturing products for most of it's IT related people. But if you think of a Cisco firewall, if we took the top cover off a Cisco firewall, it's a bunch of boards and a bunch of chips all made by Cisco. If we went to one of Cisco's competitors that we build for, we'd quickly realize that Cisco firewall is a super micro server with Intel network cards and a Broadcom accelerator, and it's off the shelf components, and their value add is the software that they put on it. Mm-hmm. The AMD Intel thing is kind of, many of our customers, just was on a call right before this with one of our clients that builds storage arrays. And what they're running into is to get enough PCIe lanes in their current design, they have to do dual processor Intel. So they have two Xeon processors in there. But what they're coming to realize is they've got more than enough CPU. So right now they're buying silver Xeons because they don't need the performance. AMD is very intriguing to them because even though the AMD individual processor would be more money, they only need one of them. So what we're on a quest for them is to try and find a single socket AMD server board that meets their performance requirements. And oddly enough, the single socket AMD still has enough PCIe lanes. So basically in many designs, a single CPU AMD has the performance of 2 Intel or close enough for this customer. And then the issue is, well, how many PCIe lanes does it have? 2 Intels versus 1 AMD, and AMD is kicking butt in PCIe lanes right now. So yeah, from a home point of view, I think I'm fine, but we're kind of living that one every day, and folks who normally probably would not have looked at AMD for their core architecture are really taking it serious now.
Yeah. I think because of that, I'd look at an i7 on the Intel side as opposed to an i5 from a home build standpoint. Now, that being said, I guess it depends what your home build is, but is there a temptation if you're going to go Intel to just go ahead and drop an i7 in there instead of an i5?
But possibly it was kind of one of my next steps in the Intel version of this build, was just to price out the difference of what it would take to get up to an i7, just to get a little more horsepower there. So all kind of options I'm looking at on that one is bumping to an i7 on the CPU, going to 64 gig on the memory, and then popping up to a 16 gig version of the graphic card.
Yeah.
So just some hops there. That probably takes me up probably to $1,250 instead of the $1,000 kind of dollar point I'm at right now. But but still, once again, I seem to spend about $3,000 a year on coffee. So if so, spending $1,200 for a computer when time tells that I keep a computer for about 4 years, it's not bad.
Yeah. And I think the home builds we do, because they're so much more versatile. There we go. Than a custom or a, an off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get a little bit longer life out of them because you can.
Oh, you
I
do.
think you can. There's more things you can do with them, or you can retire them and move them down into other. That's kind of. I've made a lot of those where we just move them down to, they become storage servers, or they, whatever, they become a router. In some regards that works that way. Yeah, I think. When I weighed those two, I really love the AMD side of things, and it kind of reminds me. It's going to be a bad analogy, but it kind of reminds me of Intel being the Ford Mustang, and maybe from the muscle car Mustang days where it was all engine and that's all that mattered, versus maybe like I don't even know, a Toyota or a Honda Accord that it's got some power to it, but the rest of it works out really, really well.
Right.
And you're like, okay, so this is a whole car versus just a super powerful engine right now.
Right.
Listen, there's probably folks in their cars now screaming at me with different examples. And that's okay. That's okay. You fill in where you want to with that. And I'm sure it was a bad example, but the point being, I think AMD is probably today a better all around CPU. Just as you mentioned, that power, performance for cost and power is right on that for what you're doing versus the Intel. Now they'll come back around, but Intel will right the ship maybe there.
Oh yeah.
On that, but I've really enjoyed the 56. I got that 5600X, and on that box, it has just been delightful. It's really, really worked out well. It's been a really good box to put that together. Okay, so and then price wise, right? I mean, on those CPUs, you're also in that $200 to $300 range, right? That's kind of for both, and you've got some movement. I think CPUs are the area where I would, if I was shopping right now, I would watch for deals. Right. I mean, don't you? That just seems to be the right place to watch for deals right now. What do you think?
I fully agree, and actually, that came up in the chat on Discord. So all my links are from Newegg. I bought a lot of stuff at Newegg. Their configurator tool works really well. As long as I can get everything I want, I'm likely to buy this from my local Micro Center because I love the fact that I still have a computer store I can go to. Yeah. And when you talk about pricing, for however Micro Center does it, their bundles are really quite good. If you pick a CPU with them and a motherboard with them, they always seem to have a decent deal or some kind of combo deal. If you throw memory in it, they just seem to have some really good bundle pricing at Micro Center.
Yeah, it's good, and it's good to support local.
Oh yeah,
good to make sure the local store is getting it. Jim Shoemaker is asking, he says, is it true that AMD cores can all run low power mode? Do you know? I don't know.
I do not know. I'd have to check on that.
That's a good question.
There's been so AMD used to take a real beating on poor laptop support. And I've just read a couple of things based on how that could very well be how they're dealing with laptop. And then my other, I didn't throw any links in here, but my other area of a lot of interest is the minis, the Intel NUCs, the little computer boxes. And I just, Intel, it's way overpriced, but Intel has one of these little NUCs that is an i7 and an A770 CPU in a box that is, smaller than a cigar box, so I have no idea how they get the heat out of that thing, but they don't.
They go out faster. I think this AMD laptop that I have, I just don't think it's vented Like
Yep.
it got older and older and older. I could hear the fans running more and more and more. And
Oh, sure.
I don't know if we threw more at it. I mean, we started using. I mean, I think the last 3 years we started doing more Teams, more Zoom,
Hmm.
right? All those taking more, and I just think I wore that thing out,
Oh, could very well be.
and didn't cool. Well, I think that's one of those things. Of course, with your build, you're going to get some options to do some much better cooling for these for both the GPU and the CPU,
Hmm.
right? Kind of keep them that way. I've kind of found, man, if you don't get that, especially on some of this new stuff, if you don't get that cooling right, I think it really affects those chips over time, and
Oh,
they just get sloppy. I know that's not the right word, but that's what it
no,
feels like, you know?
we could if you'd like to do a weird show sometime, another thing that we're so back to my work, system integration, we are working a lot with liquid cooling guys,
Mm.
and there's folks that have the traditional system of custom cold plates on server processors and devices in the box, to the whole other end of the spectrum, which is full immersion. We're working with someone right now where we're going to help them make servers immersion ready, which means you go in and you take out all the rubber parts, you take the fans out of everything. You have to work with the server vendor to make the onboard control, the IPMI and other functions understand that, hey, there's no fans in here, but it's okay. Don't freak out that there's no fans. So it's gotten to be really interesting how the economics these guys have come up with around immersion. It's outrageously expensive because I'm going to sell you this huge tank full of non-conductive fluid from 3M or numerous other vendors. And we're going to put servers in there, and you're going to be able to crank them up twice as fast as they're running right now, and they're going to last longer than if you had air blown over them.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
one of these companies, as I'm an old guy, I'm 62 now. A lot of the young guys at one of these liquid cooling guys, I was getting a little shade about being an old guy, and I had to point out to them that liquid cooling is nothing new. Oh,
Mhm.
when,
Mhm.
when did you first get exposed to liquid cooling?
Mhm.
It was 1985, and they all
Uh-huh.
look at me like, 1985? What are you talking about? I grew up in Western Wisconsin. Have you heard of a company called Cray Research?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Cray,
Cray.
Cray, Cray
Yeah.
A friend of mine wrote diagnostics at Cray Research, and
Yeah. Yeah.
took him to lunch one day, and he brought one of the new employees with, and it's like, oh, what do you do here at Cray? I'm a hydrologist. A hydrologist, what do you do? And he goes, I have to make little dams to block the die, because at that time they were buying Motorola 68,000 processor die, soldering them straight on boards, and then dunking them into
Mm.
floor inert to keep them cool. And he had to come up with the little dams to keep the floor inert from knocking them off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you young kids, I do know stuff.
Jim Shoemaker says 62, old. Ha! Just a kid. Just a kid. I know I turned 55. Do I see 55 this year? I think I'm 55. Is that right? 68. Yeah, 55 this year.
There you
So
go.
I'm a kid. I'm just a kid too. So yeah, yeah, it is it is yeah, it is one of those things where, and listen, it's always been this way. I don't want to make it feel like or sound like I'm like, "Oh, heat's a problem." I mean, it's always been a problem. But I think with a lot of the CPUs that we're getting, a lot of the loads we're
Mhm.
putting them on there, and then
Well,
making sure they do have good cool. I just think it helps, and I think this is the cheap, and I shouldn't say cheap, but with some of the enterprise grade laptops that they're cranking out as what used to be workstations, right? We used to give people these workstations. We now give them these laptops because just everybody gets a laptop. I
mhm.
think, at least where I'm at. Um, and they're just not lasting as long. Like,
True.
and you just like 3 or 4 years and they're done. And you're like,
Yep.
why did this become such a piece of crap? Well, I think it's because of cooling. I think those chips are just getting
Yep.
loose, you know,
Oh, very,
in
very,
there. Yeah.
very, very much so. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of physics behind the damage that heat does.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting when you start talking to these liquid cooling guys, whether they're dual phase immersion, single phase, or cold plate, I didn't think about it till you get in a conversation with them, but all the computer stuff you and I are talking about right now, this was designed for airflow.
Mm-hmm.
The whole reason, you think about the standard of how far apart cards are in an ATX system. Well, part of that is to have enough room for air to flow in between them and keep them cool.
Sure.
Why is the CPU and the memory got to be positioned the way it is? Well, you got to have room for a heat sink to cool the CPU, and you got to have room for air to move over the memory. As soon as air is out of the equation, things you can pack stuff together very, very tightly.
Yeah. Or just think about how much more life you might get out of some of those components if they're standard distance, but better cooling, right? And so, yeah.
No, absolutely.
Other thoughts, Kevin? I think we've gone through most of your parts list here, and we'll post that theaverageguy.tv/HGG566 here once we post this. But any other thoughts on this? When are you going to pull the trigger?
Probably first part of April, unless I get excited and do something before then. I got a business trip to Texas for a big project, but the only other thing is my overly enamored desire for cases to be really small. So one of the systems I currently have uses a Thermaltake Core 7i, which is a good, well-rounded ITX case. And then I've also got a Sigmatech Nebula, which is another good case for that. The case brand I'm overly enamored with, I've posted a few times on Discord about is Johnsbow. These guys really seem to get small cases. So this I think it's V8 is the one on the Discord group I've also posted. They've got a 5-drive mini ITX server case that's really quite cool. The only big problem with Johnsbow is they're either in stock or they're not in stock. So you end up trying to track down their stuff can be a bit difficult from that point of view. And pricing can be kind of all over the place. So likely I'll probably just stay with the Thermaltake and the Sigmatech I have right now. And I've got a couple of decent Seasonic power supplies to shove in those. So it's one of the things, even though I will probably recycle cases, I'm usually pretty quick to put new power supplies in them to get things going again.
This one reminds me of the old HP microserver right here.
Yes. Yep. Johnsbow has a couple of designs with this. This guy is a microserver, kind of a knockoff. Mini ITX, nice little cube design. The other one is a little longer design that they have, but similar type of flow. So the Johnsbow has built some very good quality cases. So it's been very good.
Their N2 for those listening to us on audio only. We're looking at some of these cases. Of course, Kevin, if you're new to Home Gadget Geeks, Kevin was kind of the expert and even built a hard drive mod, right? Some what cases for the Gen 9, 8, I forget.
Gen 8 microserver. Yeah. And actually I should have grabbed a screenshot of it. Yes, you can still find Gen 8 microservers still are very popular on eBay. There's a kind of a group of Unraid guys who, as Microsoft has got it out of the OSs, but one of the old home server folks sent me a link one day to an eBay sale. Somebody was selling a microserver on eBay, and in the title they made a quick point to say includes Schoondoggy mod bracket. So I knew I hit it big when not only selling an HP Gen 8 microserver, but they threw in the much hallowed 4-drive Schoondoggy bracket, and I actually still get get emails of people asking me to make more of those things, and I have to tell them I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. The big belly can hold, it says here on it. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down below. Your bracket was up on top over on the side, right?
Yep.
Where you could get an additional hard drive in there.
Yeah, you could actually the use case for it ended up being putting 2.5-inch drives in there, and with stacking clips, you could fit 4 2.5-inch drives on it. So for those who had maxed out the front 4 bays, it gave you a way to pop 4 more drives in. And for those keeping track today, that doesn't sound like a good idea, because 2.5-inch 9.5 millimeter drives topped out at 2 terabyte. But keep in mind, we're talking about 2012, 2013 kind of time frames when a 2 terabyte drive was not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Size wise. So
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good in those days. Yeah. We thought like 10 terabytes was a lot. You know, man, if you had 10 terabytes, I mean,
it's a lot of storage.
How many movies you could store, how many movies you could rip and store on that, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy to think of the Jim Shoemaker says his HP N40L, which I think is the one I had too, is still running as an Unraid server. Yeah, they keep those things keep chugging along. Not the most power in the world, and you want to upgrade the RAM a little bit, but they still chug along. I mean, you wouldn't want to throw too much at them. You wouldn't want them transcoding, or you necessarily wouldn't want them, doing any heavy lifting. But as a storage, that's all it takes.
They did well, and towards the end of home server days, and we branched into a few other things. What got to be popular with the Gen 8 was the fact that it was a real HP server. So it ran ILO for its remote access, and it ran their Smart RAID dynamic RAID controller. So much at that point in time, a lot of folks were trying to better their career at work by learning networking. So you'd set up a Cisco home lab, and you'd pick up an old Cisco firewall and a Cisco switch and set up a home lab. Well, HP, in some of the dialogue that I and Dave McCabe and John Stutzman had with the HP folks, is they caught on to that, and they tried to help fuel us with things. And for a while there, other than the home server aspect, it really turned into a home server lab kind of aspect. Is, hey, you can learn how to configure and set up RAID controllers, and learn how to use ILO for remote access and all these other things. And it's all the same stuff that the big HP Xeon servers do, but you can get into it for not a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, I think about Paul Brarian too, who's got that whole lab concept. I mean, he has made a career out of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Paul's a great example of driving, kind of that next wave then was virtualization. And Paul's been a big VMware advocate for a long, long time. And his whole home lab for VMware thing was a phenomenal success. Very, very, very empowering for people.
Yeah, tinkertry.com if you want to check out Paul. He's one of the most thorough dudes in the world. Like, Paul and I are opposite ends of that. I don't keep track of any details. He keeps track of all of the details.
I forget what trade show it was. I used to do a lot of trade shows back in my previous life, and Paul was, I think, maybe working for IBM at the time, and he came over to our booth, and we were just geeking out. And the two marketing people that were working the booth with me were smiling and nodding, and Paul finally left, and it was kind of normal, who the hell was that guy?
Yeah Wow, like he's forgotten more than I know. So it's he's pretty amazing. He does some pretty amazing stuff. So good friend of the show too. So, well, Kevin, I think with that we'll kind of wrap it. Good luck on this. Again, just a reminder, I'll post all these links that we're talking about in the show notes. theaverageguy.tv/HGG, because you're writing this down, 566. It's out there. 566 will get you there. And if you've got if you want to join in on the conversation around it, Kevin has posted this to the Discord group. You can add it to the averageguy.tv/Discord. Get that done and joining the conversation. We're mid-March right now. He's going to probably pull the trigger here in a couple weeks. So you have to get in fast if you want to be a part of the conversation. But I think that would be okay. Kevin, thanks for coming out and filling in here. And just a great it's great to kind of get back to some gear,
Sure.
and I think we've all kind of gotten away from it because it's been easy just to buy the consumer products, but I'm kind of bored with the consumer products. You're like, oh, well, okay, I could buy another Kindle Fire or, or
I could do something fun.
Yeah, I could do something fun. Yeah, for sure.
No, I agree. Thanks for having me on. So a lot of fun.
Good to have you. Anything as you think about summer or fall besides the PC build? Anything else on the horizon you're looking forward to from a tech perspective?
You've kind of done some shows in the past. I bought a new car back around Thanksgiving. Almost headed down the EV path and did not. We've had too much snow this year. For the 30 years that I've lived here, my wife has told me I need a snow blower, and our driveway is not long enough for me to justify it. But one of our neighbors has an electric snow blower and an electric lawnmower, and I still restore old farm tractors when I get time to. So I like tinkering with old gas engines, except when I need to mow my lawn. So the idea of heading into the summer months from a technology point of view, I'm really kind of interested in, I think it might still be too soon for me, but I'm very enamored with electric battery operated lawn and garden and snow removal and that kind of stuff.
Would you get a robot? Would you get a robot lawnmower?
I don't know if I do a robot yet, but just getting something that is electric might be my first start.
Okay. They're getting really good. I still think we're a couple years away, but I'm seeing some prototypes and some ones that are showing up. Of course they're $1,000, right? $1,500. It's that I can get a pretty nice mower for that price. One that I push type deal. Snow blowers are the same way. I'm not exactly sure. Your snow is like ours, where sometimes it's thick and heavy, and you got to get a lot of battery to make that make sense. And you're like, the torque is good, but once you've used the torque, the batteries are kind of, come up against a tough spot and have that thing kind of grind on it for a second, and you've used 70% of your battery. And it's
agreed.
Like, right.
And in the EV shopping, with the idea of maybe getting an electric car, several of most of my engineering team is in San Jose, and several of them own Teslas and love them. Electric cars are great cars, but
they're not snow plows either.
Well, they're not snow plows. And the EV group I belong to up here, a lot of guys were posting on some of these sub-zero days, their battery life was 50%.
Right.
So it dropped by half. Now, those were smaller vehicles. Tesla batteries seem to handle cold weather better, but a lot of the Chevy Volt and things like that, it gets below zero. Those batteries go down really, really fast. So
I think about parking it in the parking lot at Gallup, and it's 10 below, through the afternoon, and then you go out there and you're like, No, listen, we're all going it's headed that direction for sure. We're all going to be there. They're going to figure these things out, right? I love the idea of these running all the time lawnmowers, these robot lawnmowers. They're running all the time. They're not bogging down. It's not like they're mowing. You think about if you go on vacation for 2 weeks and you come back and you get your lawnmower out and it's been raining and it's thick, wet grass. An electric lawnmower, gonna struggle, right? It's gonna struggle to finish that thing, where you got a robot lawnmower that's just mowing it every day, regardless of whether it's raining or not, keeping that thing, nice fit. I love that concept. And I think it's the perfect place for it. You bring them in the winter, they live inside, bring them inside to keep those batteries fresh, right? I love that. I love that idea.
Yep.
So we'll have to see. I think we still got a ways to go. I think that's the next evolution of batteries is cold weather, by the way.
I agree.
I think that's where somebody figures it out. Well, Kevin, again, thanks. Can you hang tight for 1 second as I wrap this up? Okay.
Yep.
Hang tight for me. A couple things on the way out. One, if you want to leave us a message, if you want to head out to homegadgetgeeks.com, you can leave a message there. A question, a comment, whatever. We'll play it on the show. I always appreciate that. If you got an email you want to send me or you got some feedback on it, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. Of course, we thank Maple Grove Partners for their support and sponsorship of the site. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust, and you know that's Christian. Head out to maplegrovepartners.com. Plans still start $10. Last time I talked to Christian, not planning on raising prices, at least not today. So I'd lock it in. If you need a site, I'd lock in $10 with him, or as little as $10. Depends what you're getting. But maplegrovepartners.com. Don't forget, check out HelloFresh. If you they've kind of upped the savings over there at HelloFresh, and so what used to be $40 is now $110, which is kind of crazy. Save as much as $110 on your first 5 boxes. That first $40 is just the first week alone, so you can check it out over there. Head out to theaverageguy.tv/HelloFresh. God, we're just loving it. We just keep doing it. It's one of those things, like if I had to stop doing it because of inflation, Kevin, I'd cry. I'd cry. I love my HelloFresh. It's just one of those things we just keep doing. We just had one last night. It was super good. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Uyghur next week, Aaron Lawrence the week after that. So we got some folks coming up. I talked about Mark Robson coming 4 or 5 weeks for a barbecue and grill show. He'll be back. So stay close. Brian says, enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot with PC builds. So good. Glad you did, Brian. Thanks for coming out. We'll be here next week. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. All right, Kevin. Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks for jumping in here. I'm excited about your builds. We'll have to do an update once you decide what you are going to do and you buy it. We'll have to maybe we do a follow-up show like in May or June or something. Just ping me when you're ready. And we'll see what you did. And then you can talk a little bit about from the building. When's the last time you built a computer?
Probably about a year ago, I redid my Unraid server. So that was probably the last thing I really wanted to jump into. But for a home PC, that probably would have been my son's last. The gaming PC he has right now, so that'd probably been 2019. So yeah, about 4 years ago. So
it's been a while. Yeah, that was, to me, I was surprised how different and yet how the same.
Yeah,
like you're like, oh, that's not that different. You're like, okay, this is the CPUs still fit the same. Like it's the same exact thing. You think it's been 10 years. Wouldn't we have come up with a different way of doing CPUs?
Nope. Well, and I did help out a sort of a friend of ours had posted on one of the local community Facebook pages that her son had built a computer and it works for a little while and shuts down. And can somebody help? And of course, everybody's, well, take it to one of the PC fix it kind of places. And it just popped into my head. And I said, what did he use for thermal paste? And it was, don't remember buying thermal paste. And because I know the person, I said, I DM'd her to say, hey, I'll be right over. Sure enough, he missed the thermal paste kind of idea. So we took the heat sink off, put a little thermal paste on. It's a good learning thing for him, and fired it up, and boom, everything's working. So
nice. Yeah.
Heat. Yeah.
Back to heat, right?
Yep.
Back to the heat conversation. Yeah. Yeah. When I started, I put air cooling on it. And then Ryan sent me that Arctic cooler, and it brought it down, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 degrees at peak temperature. And looks great, looks super cool, so it was fun, but had to, you take the fan comes with it already on it. So you just put it on there and then, take that off, wipe it off, new thermal paste, put the new one on there. Right.
Yep.
Deal. So And I that's always, I'm a little squeamish on thermal paste just because like everything else is dummy proof, but thermal paste, like you can put too much. It's not like it doesn't need damage. You can put too much, or maybe not enough.
It's amazing how, and that's one thing I've always broken the rules on is many of them tell you to make a cross with thermal paste. Others it's dots. And I've just always defaulted to, I keep a box of rubber gloves, and I put a rubber glove on, I put some thermal paste on my finger, and I just thinly smear a coat over the whole top. And that has given me, I've never had an issue with thermal paste.
That's a good idea.
Either way, not enough or too much. So it's always worked out. So
I've always just done a dollop, a healthy dollop in the center, let it squish out.
Yep. No, I think that I think that gives you good coverage.
Yeah.
And I think the heatsink guys and the CPU guys, they get it, but the heatsink guys get it is if you tighten this thing down to the right torque, it's going to spread the paste around properly anyway. So it all kind of works out that way.
You do you have any March Madness bracket craziness going on at your work?
Not so much. I'm heading down to Texas next week, so I have a feeling I'm going to get bombarded with it down there. So we'll see. I'm sure I'll get looped into a bracket or two.
We'll see if Houston makes it out of the game tonight. I think it was tied when I was looking here a little bit earlier. But yeah, I filled out a bracket. Most years I do some studying. I'm like, oh, look at follow some stories, try to be smart about it, and I just get destroyed. So this year I was like, well, I'm just going to go off instinct. What looks cool? First 3 games, 0-3. I so suck at this. So yeah, I think I got to check my bracket here before I go to bed. But I think I've already lost, type deal. But
hey, it happens. It's fun to play.
It does. It is fun. You doing anything for St. Patrick's Day tomorrow? I should have wore green. You got green on, but I should have wore some green. What
I think we've got dinner plans, so
nice.
we're heading downtown for sushi. So haven't done that for a while. So hopefully go out and have a good time.
Yeah, that's good. We need to do something fun. Brian says it was a tough day for him and his bracket too. Yeah. And we're only halfway through. We still have a bunch of games tonight and all day tomorrow. So, you're like Saturday and Sunday. Usually what I find that first weekend is difficult, and then it kind of locks in. It locks in a little bit easier. Guys, if you're listening live, thanks for coming out. Appreciate you guys and appreciate you coming out in the chat room. We'll see you next week. Uyghur is here just for the week, and come give Uyghur a hard time. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.